Story Narae, the art of storytelling.
Story Narae, where every book opens to a new tale. Before we begin today's story, let me introduce the author, Arthur Conan Doyle. Born in 1859 in Edinburgh, Scotland, he trained as a physician, yet achieved lasting fame through literature. His creation, Sherlock Holmes, with sharp reasoning and human charm, captivated readers across the world. Even today, Doyle is remembered as the father of detective fiction, and Holmes as more than a character, an icon of his age. Today, from Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes collection, we present The Red-Headed Lead. I had called upon my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, one day in the autumn of last year and found him in deep conversation with a very stout, florid-faced, elderly gentleman with fiery red hair. With an apology for my intrusion, I was about to withdraw when Holmes pulled me abruptly into the room and closed the door behind me. "You could not possibly have come at a better time, my dear Watson," he said cordially. "I was afraid that you were engaged." "So I am, very much so." "Then I can wait in the next room." "Not at all. This gentleman, Mr. Wilson, has been my partner and helper in many of my most successful cases, and I have no doubt that he will be of the utmost use to me in yours also." The stout gentleman half rose from his chair and gave a bob of greeting, with a quick little questioning glance from his small fat encircled eyes. "Try the settee," said Holmes, relapsing into his armchair and putting his fingertips together, as was his custom when in judicial moods. "I know, my dear Watson, that you share my love of all that is bizarre and outside the conventions and humdrum routine of everyday life. You have shown your relish for it by the enthusiasm which has prompted you to chronicle, and, if you will excuse my saying so, somewhat to embellish so many of my own little adventures. Your cases have indeed been of the greatest interest to me," I observed. "But I never yet heard of your applying for any position or being interested in any advertisement. Many of them are trivial, no doubt, but occasionally one comes upon a singular advertisement which contains a mystery, and may mean a great deal. You know my methods, Watson. Now, Mr. Jabez Wilson here has been good enough to call upon me this morning, and to begin a narrative, which promises to be one of the most singular which I have listened to for some time. You have heard me remark that the strangest and most unique things are often connected, not with the larger but with the smaller crimes, and occasionally indeed where there is no actual crime at all. To Mr. Jabez Wilson's case in point, it may prove an illustration. You will remember, Watson, how the affair of the blue carbuncle revealed some of the strange factors which can lie at the root of a crime. You know my method. It is founded upon the observation of trifles. But now, Mr. Wilson, pray let us have the details of your case without further digression. I assure you that it is the most interesting, and I shall be happy to give you any advice within my power." The client, puffing out his chest with an appearance of some little pride, pulled a dirty and wrinkled newspaper from the inside pocket of his greatcoat. As he opened it, he began to speak with a ponderous and measured voice, as if he were giving a lecture. "You see, gentlemen," he said, "as you may imagine, I am a man of very simple habits, and my wants are few. It happened that I had a small pawnbroker's business at Coburg Square, near the city. It's not a very large affair, and of late years it has not done more than just give me a living. I used to be able to keep 2 assistants, but now I can only afford 1. And I would have had none at all if it had not been for the kindness of young Vincent Spaulding, who works for half wages just to learn the business. This young man has an eye for photography, and he would have made his mark in that profession, but he was not able to afford the training. He is very clever at his work, and though he is not such a handsome youth, his head is not over-large. He is quick in his ways, and has a white splash of acid upon his forehead which disfigures him. Otherwise he is an excellent assistant. As I have heard that he was doing something in the salon photography, or something of the sort, I did not care what he did, so long as he paid his way and did his work. But he is still with me, and an excellent assistant he is. Now, gentlemen, I come to the very singular thing that happened. One day he came into the office with this very paper in his hand, and he said, "Why should you put yourself to such trouble for so little?" I looked at him in surprise, and he pointed to the advertisement. "It was this advertisement," he said, and I read it to him, just as it now appears. "To the Red-Headed League on account of the bequest of the late Ezekiel Hopkins, of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, U.S.A., there is now another vacancy open which entitles a member of the League to a salary of $4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind and above the age of 21 years are eligible. Apply in person on Monday, at 11 o'clock, to Duncan Ross, at the offices of the League, 7 Pope's Court, Fleet Street." You can easily imagine, gentlemen, how this caught my eyes, for my hair is of the very shade which gives me a full title to the vacancy. When I saw the advertisement, I thought it was a bit of a joke, gentlemen, for many of the advertisements are, as you know. But young Spaulding encouraged me to apply. "What is the harm?" said he. "If you don't get it, you are no worse off than you are now. If you do, you stand to gain a tidy sum for very little work." Well, gentlemen, I thought over the matter, and as I had nothing to lose, I decided to apply. I put on my frock coat and walked over to the address given. There was a crowd of red-headed men outside the door, hundreds of them, all kinds and shades, but there was such a laugh that I thought it was all a hoax. However, I made my way through the crowd and soon found myself in front of the office. There was nothing in the office but a couple of wooden chairs and a deal table, behind which sat a small man with a head that was even redder than mine. He had a pair of very fat hands, and his smile was as broad as his face. He told me that he was Mr. Duncan Ross, and that he was the manager of the League. He said that they had decided to make a vacancy for another member, and that my hair was of the right shade to entitle me to it. He asked me a few questions about my age, my qualifications, and my family, and finally he took a pen and wrote down my name and address. "When could you take up your new duties?" he asked. "Well, I have a business already," said I. "Oh, never mind about that, Mr. Wilson," said Vincent Spaulding. "I shall be able to look after that for you." "What would be the hours?" I asked. 10 to 2. Now a pawnbroker's business hardly requires your presence all the time, and Mr. Spaulding could look after it very well for you. In any case, you could be in the office from 10 to 2, and that would suit us admirably. "Could I ask what the duties would be?" I said. "The duties are purely nominal," he answered. "You have to be in the office, or at least in the building, the whole time. If you leave, you forfeit your position. You don't need to do anything else. There is no work of any sort, only to be there. That's all." Well, it seemed strange to me, gentlemen, but as you know, I am not a very bright one, and I thought it all right if they paid me $4 a week. So I closed my business for a while and started off for the League. At first it seemed very strange, for my duties were so slight. I had to sit in an office and copy out of the Encyclopedia Britannica the A's. There was a volume of it in the office, and I worked away from 10 to 2, with my pen going ever so steadily. Mr. Duncan Ross came in once in a while to see that I was there. The work was not difficult, but it was monotonous. Still, £4 a week was good pay for such a job. This went on for some weeks. At first, I thought it a fine thing, but after a time, I began to find it monotonous. I had written about abbots and archery and armor and architecture and Attica, and hoped with diligence to get on to the B's before very long. It cost me something in foolscap, and I had pretty nearly filled a shelf with my writings. And then suddenly, it all came to an end. The whole League was dissolved. One morning, I went to my work as usual, and the door was shut and locked, and a little card nailed upon the middle of the panel with a tack. "Here it is, and you can read for yourselves." He held up a piece of white cardboard about the size of a sheet of notepaper. It read in this fashion: "The Red-Headed League is dissolved. October 9, 1890. I was staggered, gentlemen. I did not know what to do. I went to the officers round, but none of them seemed to know anything about it. Finally, I went to the landlord, who keeps a little wine shop on the ground floor, and I asked him if he could tell me what had become of the Red-Headed League. He said that he had never heard of any such body. Then I asked him who Mr. Duncan Ross was. He answered that the name was new to him. Well, said I, the gentleman at No. 4. What, the red-headed man? Yes. Oh, said he, his name was William Morris. He was a solicitor, and he moved out of the offices yesterday. I have a new tenant now. And he pointed me to a tailor's shop. When I heard all this, I went home with my head full of doubts and suspicions. I did not know what to do, and so I came straight to you. You did quite right, said Holmes. Your case is an exceedingly remarkable one, and I shall be happy to look into it. From what you have told me, I think that it is possible that graver issues hang from it than might at first sight appear. If you will let me have red ink and pen, I think I can explain it better, said Mr. Wilson. Holmes shook his head. I have it all clear enough in my own mind, he said. The case from the beginning to the end is perfectly plain. The League was merely a device to get you out of the way for a couple of hours every day. This is very ingenious, said I, but how do you know it? I have no doubt of it, said Holmes. It is quite a simple one. You have been made the victim of one of the most cunning schemes of modern times. You see, Watson, it was perfectly obvious from the first that the only possible object of this rather fantastic business of the advertisement was to get this not-over-bright pawnbroker out of the way for a number of hours every day. It was a harmless trick, so far as Wilson was concerned, since it only meant a little loss of time. But the sinister aspect of the affair is that it was done so systematically, and for such a purpose, that there must be something more serious behind it. It is clear, therefore, that the League was simply a pretext for some ulterior object. Now, what could it be? Robbery, I cried. Precisely, said Holmes. Burglary, to be exact. There is a cellar in that pawnbroker's house that communicates with the bank next door. Now, my dear Watson, you begin to see what is in the wind. It's as clear as daylight, I answered. But why should they go to all this trouble? For one reason only. Because they could not do it openly. But once burrowed, they could get at once to their object. Remember that they had only to leave a thin party wall between them and the treasure. But how could they get in? I asked. It is surely closed at night. Their tunnel reaches the cellar. Then, when the work is done, they can break their way through, take what they want, and slip back the same way. It is a bold plan, and one which may be carried out within a few days. That is why, Mr. Wilson, you were made to spend your time copying out the encyclopedia, said Holmes. There was no thought of making you a scholar. The object was to get you out of the way. And you were taken in by it? It is perfectly wonderful, I said. But what is to be done, Holmes? What is to be done? It is a serious matter, Holmes replied. We must act, and act at once. The matter is too serious to be neglected. I shall myself go round to the city this afternoon and make some inquiries. And what will you do? I asked. Holmes stood up with a determined look. I will have a look at the offices in Coburg Square, and see what is going on there. Come with me, Watson, and you too, Mr. Wilson, if you can spare the time. At 2 o'clock we will meet here again, and go together to the scene. We all went our separate ways, and I made my way to my practice. At 2 o'clock we met again at Baker Street. Holmes's rooms were crowded with people, as usual, but he quickly whisked us out and hailed a hansom. We drove swiftly to the city and stopped in front of the pawnbroker's shop in Coburg Square. It was a poky little shop, with a brassy plate on the door, and 3 balls and a brown board with Jabez Wilson in white letters upon it. Holmes pushed open the door of the shop and we all followed him in. Inside, the place was dingy and little light came through the dirty window. At the counter, a small, dark-haired young man was busy writing in a book. He looked up as we entered. "This is Mr. Wilson's assistant, Vincent Spaulding," said Holmes. "He is still at his work, I see." "He is still there," said Wilson. "No, sir, I cannot wish for a better assistant." Holmes seemed to be delighted at the observation. "I never saw such a fellow for photography. He is still developing pictures in the cellar?" "Yes, he is still down there," answered Wilson. "He is happy enough, though it does seem a curious thing, for I never knew photography to take so much time. But he is always in the cellar at work." Holmes smiled. "Well, we may perhaps look in at the offices of the bank across the way, and see whether they can throw any light upon the matter. Come, Watson, let us make our way round." So we left the shop, and Holmes led us across the square, until we came to a great building of stone, with a massive, iron-grated door. On it was a brass plate inscribed City and Suburban Bank. Holmes stood and looked thoughtfully at the building. "The strong rooms," he said, "are down in the cellar." I peered through the iron gates and noticed the thickness of the walls. "It looks secure enough," I remarked. Holmes nodded. "It should be secure, and yet there is a mystery here. Come, Watson, let us walk around the block and see what lies behind." We walked round the square until we came to a narrow passage which led us between two buildings. Holmes stopped halfway down it, and tapped on the pavement with his stick. "We are at the back of Saxe-Coburg Square now," he remarked. "The houses are much as I suspected, small shops in front, and living rooms behind. Yes, this passage will do, our men could work here unseen. Ah!" As he spoke, he stooped down, picked up a little square of hard earth, and broke it in his hands. "See, the dirt crumbles easily, Watson. It is perfectly suitable for tunneling." Holmes continued tapping the pavement, listening intently. "Hollow. Just as I thought. This earth has been disturbed recently." We passed along until we reached the back of the bank, a high wall with barred windows. Holmes looked up, measuring the distance. "Yes, Watson, the calculation fits perfectly. They have been tunneling directly toward this spot." Holmes seemed satisfied with his observations. "Come, gentlemen, we have seen enough for today. Mr. Wilson, I advise you to stay at home. Do not go to your shop tonight. Watson, meet me here at 10 o'clock. There is dangerous work ahead." That night was dark and heavy with clouds. At 10 o'clock, I joined Holmes at Baker Street. Soon after, a police inspector named Jones and a bank director named Merriweather joined us. Holmes explained briefly, "Gentlemen, we shall spend the night in the cellar of the bank. The thieves will make their attempt tonight." We descended into the vault, carrying lanterns. Merriweather grumbled at being dragged from his club, but Holmes silenced him. "Patience, sir, we are here to protect £30,000 in gold." We hid behind boxes in the cellar. Hours passed in silence, the only sound being our own breathing. Then suddenly Holmes raised his hand. "Listen." From beneath our feet came a faint scraping sound. It grew louder, then a dull thud. A crack opened in the floor, and a hand appeared, holding a lantern. Slowly, a man's head and shoulders emerged from the tunnel. Another figure followed behind him. "Now," whispered Holmes. At his signal, we sprang forward. Holmes seized the first man by the collar, while Jones and I rushed upon the second. There was a fierce struggle in the dark vault, lanterns swinging wildly, shadows leaping across the walls. But within moments, the two burglars were overpowered and pinned to the ground. "John Clay, the murderer, thief, and forger," said Jones triumphantly, holding the taller man. "I've had my eye on you for years." The prisoner sneered, brushing dust from his sleeve. "You may have caught me, but you'll never catch my brains. I still claim to be a gentleman." "Take him away, Jones," said Holmes calmly. "The other is his confederate. The case is complete." Merriweather breathed a sigh of relief. "You have saved the bank, Mr. Holmes. The directors will be eternally grateful." Holmes only smiled. "I have merely untangled another of life's little problems." As we walked back into the night air, I asked Holmes what had first aroused his suspicion. "It was the assistant," he replied. A clever man willing to work for half wages. It was too good to be true. Then I noted his interest in photography in the cellar. That told me he wanted access to the underground. The rest was deduction. You've been listening to A Journey Through Books with Story Narae. Today's tale has come to an end. Join us again for the next story.